Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about a band by the name of Latin Quarter. Now, let me start out by telling you they're not Latin. They don't necessarily play Latin music. They're actually a British band, and they are very socially aware, socially conscious, political pop band. Now, remember back in the 60s and 70s, protest singers and political artists were actually selling really well. And by the time the 80s rolled around here in the US, they weren't doing as well. But in the UK, there were a lot of artists that were expressing their political opinions. And normally I was not drawn to them, but oddly enough, when I heard the first Latin Quarter album released in the U.S. in 1986, this is actually my original copy. When I first heard this album, it blew me away because here was a band that was, they were smart, they were sharp, they were great players, great songwriters, and they were approaching subjects that I have to admit that I was not aware of. In fact, back in the days of punk, I would learn what was going on in certain countries by the bands from those countries. Like the Jam, I would learn about things, the Clash, obviously. And Latin Quarter is even probably more political than the Clash ever were, but they don't pound that message home with loud, blaring punk rock and roll. Now, that works, obviously, but with Latin Quarter, they do it in a way that before you know it, you're just immersed in the music and the lyrics. And they didn't do very well here in the U.S., but they still have an ardent following in Europe and other places around the world. But let me tell you about the band first. Now the main singer-songwriter is Steve Scaife. He would write the music, and Mike Jones would provide the lyrics. This is a great songwriting duo. They sound nothing like Difford and Tilbrook. They sound nothing like John Wicks and Will Birch, but they work together just as well as those two songwriting partnerships who I followed at the same time I was listening to Latin Quarter. Everything just came together so well. It's like the lyrics mirrored the music and the music mirrored the lyrics. Fantastic songwriting partnership. Now that actual partnership lasted through most of their career. Now this first album came out and it's jam-packed. They actually had a hit with a song called Radio Africa, which is beautiful. And the great thing about them is this album in particular is it sounded like it was a compilation. It didn't sound like it was all the same group because Steve Scaife did sing a lot of the songs, but also there were two female vocalists in the band. One of them was Yona Dunsford, beautiful voice. The other one was Carol Douay, who also a beautiful voice, and Richard Wright on guitar. Now, interestingly enough, there's a keyboard player on this album. His name is Steve Jeffries. And he left, I believe, probably the year this album came out in the U.S., but he would come back later and play an important role in the band. And of course, I'll tell you that in a few minutes. Now, I'm going to go through all these albums really quickly because at the end of this video, I've got a 5-minute medley featuring about 10 to 12 seconds, maybe 15 seconds of songs throughout Latin Quarter's career. I focus on the early albums because those are the ones that a lot of fans are familiar with. And then I also feature a song from each of the later albums, which in my opinion are more consistent than the early ones. But that's my opinion. But anyway, this is the CD of Modern Times. Fantastic album. Like I said, with Scaife singing, with Yona, with Carol singing, it sounded like different bands, and they were trying different things with each song. Really, truly incredible album. Blew my mind when I first heard it. Now, there was a Cherry Red reissue of the album, which is right there, and this has some of the same bonus tracks, but also a few different ones as well. So you're going to need both of those if you want to get sort of a more complete picture of the band. That album came out in 85 in the UK, 86 in the US. 1987, out came Mick and Caroline. An odd name for an album, obviously, I mean, in my opinion, but it's another great album. Wasn't as consistent as the first album, but it sounded like they were gelling. They were bringing all these different influences together and sort of fusing them into one complete sound. And it's still a great record. This Cherry Red reissue has bonus tracks. Now, some of the band members dropped out by the time their 1989 album, Swimming Against the Stream, came out. absolutely incredible record. Now, you'll notice here the jewel case is broken. This is the same copy I got in 1989, and I've never replaced the jewel case. It's not the jewel case that matters to me. It's the music that's contained within. This was an incredible album, where the first two albums were sometimes glossy 80s production. This right here, this is when they gelled. This is when they found that Latin Quarter sound. It was more earthy, more acoustic, and it's really an incredible album. Swimming Against the Stream has some of my favorite songs on there, including, of course, the title track. I don't think that this has been reissued, but it's a must-have if you love smart, sharp songwriting, great vocals, and, of course, if you are politically inclined. Oh, I do have a CD single of Swimming Against the Stream, which has some great non-album B-sides. It's the only single I have by them, unfortunately. Now, unfortunately, the band decided to call it a day after the release of the Nothing Like Velvet album. Now, what this is, on the surface, it's a best-of album. It features tracks from the previous three albums, but a couple of the songs are re-recorded. They do throw in certain obscure tracks. There's a couple live tracks on there that were never released studio-wise, and that's a great place to begin if you want to get into the band. Like I said, stick around for the 5-minute medley at the end and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, 3 years later, a few of the members of the band, including Steve Skaith and Richard Wright and lyricist Mike Jones, they came back together for the album Long Pig. Now, when this first came out, I was, what? But after a few listens, and especially over the years, I've grown to absolutely love this record. It's almost like they were all drawn together because they kind of had to make this album. They felt it within them to put a new record out, and it actually sounds really good. Lots of great songs on there. Now, Long Pig is a very eclectic record. It does travel down different musical paths, but they came back to that sort of Swimming Against the Stream sound for Bringing Rosa Home in 1997. Essentially, again, Richard Wright, Steve Skaith, and Mike Jones. And this has one of my favorite songs called Angel. Lots of great songs on there. Unfortunately, after that, they split up. Now, the same year that came out came this compilation called Radio Africa. Unfortunately, I don't remember what song it is. There's a song on here that is repeated twice on different parts of the CD. So one of the songs in the track listing is missing. Now, I'm sure that a Latin Quarter fan will hopefully post that song in the comments below and let the viewers know. I should have done my homework. But that's a great compilation, also a great place to start if you want to check them out. Now, Steve Skaith, to my knowledge, I believe he moved to Mexico for a little while. He formed the Steve Skaith Band, and they released a series of albums, Mexile, Empires and Us, Imaginary Friend, and Latin Quarter Revisited, which is a collection of the Steve Skaith Band doing Latin Quarter songs. Now, his band was, I think, 3 or 4 members, so the sound is pared down because Latin Quarter was usually 4, 5, 6 members. It depends on which lineup. And these are great records. They continue on that political path, but like I said, more pared down, more stripped down. Great collection. There's also this super rare thing that Steve Skaith sent me, and this is the Kitchen Sessions, which is them doing more Latin Quarter covers. Now, lucky for us fans, the band did reunite, and their first reunion album was 2012's Ocean Head. Now, this found Steve Skaith and Mike Jones, of course. Greg Harewood was back on bass. Yona Dunsford was back on keyboards and vocals. And Steve Jeffries, who had played on the first album, was back. And he played such an important role. He continues to play this important role, whereas Steve Skaith writes these songs and does most of the vocals. Steve Jeffries adds layers of emotion, and it's incredible. I mean, he transforms these great songs already and just lifts them up, gives them atmosphere, gives them emotion. Basically, he's kind of the soul of the music and just lifts it up. And this was a great album. Like I said, returns back to that sort of more of acoustic, exploratory music that does take in different elements of different styles of world music, but is still very pop and folk-based. A great return to form. The same lineup recorded Tilt, which was released in 2014. Another great record. They had so much to say lyrically, musically. You know, I started thinking that just there are no more protest artists out there that are really committed to doing what they're doing. No political artists. It's really fantastic I mean, seriously, I learn by listening to Latin Quarter. Sure, you can get on the news and you can watch whatever you choose, but it's also interesting to listen to another person's viewpoint and learn through that. Now, in 2015, Steve Scaife recorded an acoustic album called Latin Quarter Bare Bones, and this is another incredible collection of songs. He's going back and he's sort of rearranging some of the Latin Quarter songs, obviously with an acoustic guitar or just very minimalist, and just really letting the lyrics, the vocals, the melody shine. Now, something I got to tell you about this album. As a bonus track, they added Wounded in Action, which is already a lovely song, but Steve Jeffries' daughter, Becky, provided the vocals for it. And it is incredible. Her voice is incredible. And I snuck a little bit of that on the medley, so you get to hear that too. So anyway, that's that. That came out in 2015. Steve Scaife, Latin Quarter, Bare Bones. There was another shuffle lineup change by the time The Imagination of Thieves came out. I believe this is the first album that featured bassist Yo-Yo Baez. And there was a new female vocalist by the name of Mary Carew. Now, I could have totally screwed up that name. It could be Mary Carew, could be Mary Carew, but I'm just going to call her Mary. Beautiful voice. I think she's just as good as Yona and Carol were, and she adds more dimension to the new recordings. But this is a great album here. One of my favorite Latin Quarter songs of all time is Dylan Thomas Was Right. And the way that Steve Jeffries just creates this mood with the keyboards is beautiful. And remember, he's not, it's not synth pop or anything like that. He's just adding this layer of sounds, of mood on top of the music. And it's really, really lovely. 2018 comes the album Pantomime of Wealth, yet another great album by the reunited Latin Quarter. In fact, by this time, they've released more albums reunited than they did originally. And I believe by this time, I think that Mike Jones had retired as a songwriter, although they were still using some of his lyrics for some of the songs. But that could happen on the previous album too. Again, I apologize for not checking on that. But the next project was yet another return to their back catalog. This is the Latin Quarter Trio. This is Steve Scaife, Steve Jeffries, and Mary performing sort of reinvented Latin Quarter songs. They're classic songs, of course, but just doing it in a trio form it allows them to breathe. It allows you to discover these melodies that maybe you didn't hear on the original recordings, and sometimes they twist things around. They give different moods, but it's really, really fantastic. Latin Quarter Trio, and that was released in 2019. Now, at the very end of 2021, out comes Releasing the Sheep, the brand new Latin Quarter album. Again, a great batch of songs. It seems like they're never going to run out of musical ideas. Great collection of songs. This is the brand new album as of the end of 2021. I know it's the beginning of 2022 here, but it's still new. Anyway, I love this band. I've loved them since 1986, and I wanted to share a 5-minute medley with you right now. Please give this a listen, and I'll see you on the other side.
So get up! your case. You memorize your face and the way you see your place. You wanna leave more than a trace. You want to leave some. Come on, angel, smile at me. With the truest eyes that I ever saw. Come on, angel.
They've pride on their minds and taxes to kill, and they're taking their anger to Capitol Hill. In the land of the free, nothing is finer.
It still matters the side of the tracks you're from. It still matters the side of the tracks. I go kicking, not gently, into the long nights. Dylan Thomas was right. Senorita say, God's backed up and went away. Backed up and took the key. Oh, Mexico. Oh, Mexico.
Nothing to lose. I've got nothing to lose. In a midnight dark, as a spreading bruise. Nothing to choose. I've got nothing to choose. So my dad's ghost up on Table Mountain. I was wondering what hurts him most, what hits him hard.
Or does his gaze go long to the West Bank and Gaza, or the nation state law that brings apartheid to life again, apartheid to life again?
Dad's ghost up on Table Mountain. I was wondering what
Empty windows, empty windows in the snow. How come it's winter? Winter everywhere you go. Did you think I needed? Did you think I needed to be hurt, wounded in action? Were you hoping I'd desert?
That's America for America for beginners. That's America for America for beginners. That's America for America for
Anyway, that's it. I appreciate you allowing me to talk about Latin Quarter. Thank you for hanging out with me for a little while. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me, I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.